Welcome back to Mexican Excellence. My name is Citlalli NAHUA. I am your host. And today I have an awesome guest. I'm super excited to have Sisa Quispe. Welcome everyone to Sisa. let me tell you a little bit about Sisa. You probably seen her on TikTok. She has amazing work on Instagram as well. But let me read to you her bio, just so you know more about Sisa and what we're going to be getting into. So Sisa, I'm going to read a little bit more about you, then we're going to get into it. Sisa, welcome to Mexican Excellence.
Thank you so much, Citlalli, for having me here. I'm very grateful. And of course, I'm a huge fan of yours. So this is like a huge deal for me right now. Thank you so much.
Me too. I'm a fan too. We're like, I'm so excited. Sisa Quispe is a Quechua-Aymara actress, voiceover artist, and is currently pursuing a MFA in filmmaking. Sisa was born and raised in Peru and is currently located in Lenape in Cihuatl occupied land, also known as New York City. She uses her art and platforms to speak out about Indigenous identity and environmental issues. She is currently sharing her decolonization journey on social media and hosting a series called Native Voices. So make sure to follow Sisa on Instagram, and it's Sisa Quispe. I'm going to put her social media handles underneath this video, and her weekly show is called Native Voices. So with that, we're going to begin. Sisa, again, I'm very honored to share space with you. You know, your TikTok videos are so inspiring. They're so motivating. You know, when I came across your work, right away I started sharing your videos, and it was beautiful to see, you know, Quechua-Aymara, you know, talking about the issues of identity, not falling to mestizaje, Latinidad. Like, it was like, yes, like the message is all over, and all of us are resisting these terms, you know. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you, you know, what was it like for yourself? You were born and raised in Peru. You know, can you give us a little bit about your history, where you grew up, kind of like some of the things that stand out to you about your childhood, so that we can get to know a little bit about Sisa before the decolonization journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in a very small town called Tacna. It's right next to Chile. So it's all the way in the south of Peru. Very tiny city, and it's basically like a desert surrounded by mountains of sand. My grandparents, all of them, they come from the mountains, from the Andes. And I was the second generation to have been born in Tacna. So I grew up in Tacna, you know, just a little kid, questioning everything. I would always speak up since I was a little girl. My family were very religious. And there was something going on that it just didn't, there was something weird about it, right? Lots of sexism that I will speak up since I was like 5, 6 years old, and my brother will always make fun of me because I will be always protesting, right? I did feel that because I have an Indigenous last name, that there was something going on with my last name, because like I remember my teachers, the way they will pronounce my last name, the way they will refer to me, or like when they will be mad, the way that they would use my last name made me feel that there was something wrong with it, right? I also felt that even in my family, like within my family, they will make a lot of jokes about like, oh, they will take pride more of the Spaniard side, even though we have very little Spaniard side. But that was like something that they will take pride of it, right? And I felt like, yeah, I felt proud that I also have a Spaniard last name. And, you know, one of my aunties had green eyes, and that was like the best, right? But I always felt like less than other people, you know, who were like light skin. And I was wondering, why do I feel less? Like, why? What's going on, right? So there were like just different questions that it happened through my life since I was a little kid, since I can remember. Eventually I moved to a bigger city to college, and I started to studying accounting. I became an accountant because I love numbers. I was very good at it. So I was like, okay, so I guess this is what I have to do, you know? And I came to New York City to work. I fall in love with it. And that really changed my life. I was only 20 years old, and it was my first time getting on a plane, traveling to a huge city. And I remember like coming to New York City and seeing so many people from different colors, different cultures. And what I remember the most from that experience was that I like this guy who was like from Costa Rica. He was a light-skinned guy. And like he told me, because I told him, you know, I like you, right? And he was like, I'm sorry, I only date Black girls. And I was like, what? But I'm lighter than Black girls, because that's how I thought, that the lighter you were, the more beautiful you were. So I remember like going back to my country and saying, wow. And then like telling to my friends, and they were like, really? He only like Black girls? Yes. You know, and then I remember like other guys who found me attractive, and something that I've never felt. Like that was just, it really opened my mind, right? It was the first time I felt beautiful. It was the first time like to be beautiful, you didn't like your life, your color of skin didn't matter, you know, it didn't matter where you come from, it didn't matter your last name, you know. So well, I went back to Peru, become an accountant, started to work as an accountant for a couple of years, and then I realized, is this life? So this is it, right? Like I am supposed to die in this job, being an accountant every day from 9 to 5. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who love that. But for me, that was something like, no, like I need movement, I need challenges, I need something new, right? And I felt like, okay, if I'm going to stay in that place in the next 20, 30 years, I could see myself becoming a manager, but in the same routine, you know. So I'm going to have a family here, and that's it. Like that's life, right? So I always wanted to come back to New York. I always got it inside of me. And one day I decided I'm going to New York. I'm going to go for 3 months and let's see what happens in life, you know. And that's how I ended up moving to New York City. I never went back to Peru. But yeah, that was like basically the beginning, you know, of everything for me.
Wow. And can we talk about your last name? So you said
Yeah.
it's an indigenous last name, right? Is it from what language does it come from? Like, is it your dad's side, your mom's side? Like, how did you know it was an indigenous last name? Because that's really rare. You know, I know for a lot of Mexicans, it's really rare that someone still is born with their indigenous last name. So just a little curious about that.
So actually my last name is Quispe, and Quispe is one of the most, I don't like to say common, I will say like the most popular last name in all Peru. And this last name, it basically comes from Quechua and Aymara. So it's very special. It was españolizado, so they kind of like tried to becoming like to sound more Spanish, like Spanish. So instead of Quispe, actually was Hespe. And Hespe means like something transparent. So it's like the water that you can find in the top of an apple, that it's basically like a mountain, like where the water is born, right? Big mountains, we call it apples. And it's the water that you can find on top, that it's very transparent, brilliant, and beautiful, right? So that means something that it's honest, you know, somebody honest, or somebody who shines, you know. So it's a beautiful meaning. And you know, Citlalli, I have no idea of the meaning of my last name until last year. The only thing I knew about my last name, it was that it was indigenous, and it was something to not be proud of. And I convinced myself that it was that way because my family members, they changed their last name. I met a lot of friends who changed their last name, Quispe, they changed it. I was treated in a different way every time I will tell people my last name. They will say, "What? You're Quispe?" No, really, even from my own friends, they were like, "No, you're joking, right?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm Quispe." And of course, how am I gonna feel? It's like, yes, I am Quispe, So that became something that it was like my little secret. I didn't want anybody to know my last name. And of course, I knew that a better last name, it will give you, you already will sound like better, right? It will give you status. Of course, like even every time I will turn on the TV, I will see people that they will change their last name. They will say, "Oh, her last name was this, but she changed it to that," right? And just try to look the more wider, like the more closer to European was the best. So it's kind of sad because that's a huge part of my identity. And it was just a year ago, and since then it really changed the way I felt about my last name. And it's just now I feel so proud to have my last name. It just means so much.
Beautiful. And what about Sisa? Can you tell us what Sisa means?
Yeah, so actually this is a whole story. My actual name is Silvia Susana. And I was working on a book that it's called The Artist's Way, and it's a beautiful book. It helps you with creativity. And at some point, like the author was saying, like, if you can choose like an artist name, what it will be, right? And I feel a deep connection with Sisa because it's in Aymara and Quechua as well. These two languages and cultures are very connected. Um, Especially because of the geographics. So I love Sisa, and it means flower. I just love it so much, and it felt a huge connection with it because spring is my favorite season of the year because everything flourishes, and it's just a reminder for myself that life is like a cycle, right? Just like my ancestors, our ancestors, so like everything, it's just a cycle. Everything is going to flourish eventually. So I felt this huge connection. And then when I was taking my Quechua classes, my yachachik, my ñañay, my teacher, my sister, she told me, if you feel that you are Sisa, then you are Sisa. You don't have to feel like, no, this is only my artist name. If you have that connection, this is who you are. And then she mentioned me that back in the day, our ancestors will name somebody and it will have a deep meaning for their life. As opposed as back in the day, as opposed as my grandma and my mom, that they were like named after a saint, according to the calendar. That was the name that you were born this day. Okay, this is your name, right? So for me, it means like a point where I decided to claim who I am, my identity. So that's a reminder for me, Sisa. Like that's the moment where I decided to flourish in my life as an artist, in my identity. So yeah, that's the story.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. And you know what? Now in that you're doing native voices, you're on TikTok. Can you tell us when you started questioning like this whole system of like identities and blanqueamiento? Like
Yeah.
what was it, like a process, or did it all hit you in one day? Like how
Mm-hmm.
did you begin that decolonial journey of saying, you know what, no, like that's not who I am. I'm Indigenous. I'm Quechua-Aymara. Can you kind of tell us about that process?
Yeah. So I remember identifying as somebody who had indigenous roots but was not indigenous. I remember identified as someone who had indigenous roots but was mestiza because I was not full-blooded, right? And I didn't question that until last year as well. That I saw a friend and she was like telling me, "Are we mestizos? Like, what is that come from? And I was like, well, mestizo is simply you are not full-blooded and that's it. We're all mestizos. Peru, we're all mestizos. It's a country of mestizos. Latin America, we're all mestizos. That's what I was taught. And then I remember like saying, why am I saying this? Right? It's something that you were told your whole life and you never, it's like, okay, you listen and then everybody repeats it and everybody repeats it and you never question it, right? And then that was the moment where, am I really a mestiza? Is that even a thing, being mestiza? Aren't we all mestizos? Like, aren't we all mixed, right? I mean, mestizos specifically were somebody who was like half Spaniard, half indigenous, but I was not half Spaniard. I have no idea anything about my Spanish culture, nothing, right? So that was like the first like logic I had, right? Because okay, I have a Spaniard last name and then I have an indigenous last name. Yes, I'm mestiza, right? But then it didn't make sense at some point. And then I was on TikTok as well. Black Lives Matter happened. And I mentioned Black Lives Matter because I remember when I wanted to do my board, you know, to support Black Lives Matter movement, I was like, first I was like, Latinos for Black people. And there was, but Latinos can be Black. Okay, no. Okay, it's not. Hispanic for Black, but anybody can, okay, no. Okay, indigenous, but I'm not indigenous. Okay, no, brown for Black people. Okay, yeah, browns for Black. Yeah, that sounds better. But like that was, okay, who am I, right? And also as an artist, it's really important to know who you are. And I was reading so many books and they will always talk about not only to know yourself, but also to know who was your parents, of course, who were your grandparents, who were your great grandparents, who are your great grandparents, because when you understand where are they coming from, you will understand who you are. You will understand why there's so much trauma, there was so much trauma carried, why you reacted in this way. You will understand certain behaviors, right? And then when I knew, okay, my grandparents were somebody who migrated from the Andes because of work or because they were like very poor. Many of basically the four of them migrated when they were like between 11 years old and 14, 15 years old. So they were like kids. One of them migrated who was 12 years old by himself to a little community in the Andes, to the capital of Peru. And I just cannot imagine just a little kid, you know, traveling and then working. So when I understood that, I was able to know, wow, this is why I'm like this. This is why they didn't pass my indigenous language to me, because there was a lot of racism, like they were trying to protect me. So I was able to understand a lot of things.
So at what point was this? So you're saying you see Black Lives Matter, you're seeing like all this like activism happening, and that's when you start kind of questioning like your identity. When did it come to like the whole Latinidad? And you know, because I'm sure like in Mexico, like they don't really use Latino, you know, but because of the US markets and all this, it's like that's all you hear. And so it's really hard for people to say, oh wow, like we're not Latino. Like when did that realization come in, and like how did you put that together?
So I remember I didn't identify as Latina either back when I was in Peru. And most of people, they didn't really identify as Latinos because they thought that it was something that meant only people from the Caribbean or like Colombian people, but not us. I felt like I had that label as soon as I moved to the US, right? And automatically everybody says like, oh, you're Latina, you're sexy, oh, you're fiery, you're spicy, right? And I was in my 20s, so I was like, yeah, I kind of like it. So yeah, I'm Latina. I dance reggaeton. Yeah, so that was like, I don't know. That's what I thought, right? And I remember I was on TikTok. This was just a couple of months ago, and there was this guy saying, oh, when Latinos, when people think that Latinidad is not one race. And then he said, Latinos, we are different races. And then he put a picture of a Afro-descendant woman, white person, and then he put a picture of a Quechua person. He was with his poncho, his chullo, in the Andes, pichando coca, like chewing the coca leaves. And I got so upset because I was in the middle of like learning about Quechua and indigenous people, and I was like, you cannot tell these Quechua people who have their own music, who have their own culture, language, everything, that they're Latinos. That just doesn't make sense. And I didn't know how to explain it because some friends asked me, like, how do you feel about it? It's like about Latinidad. And I just didn't know, but I just felt that it was wrong. It's like, it's just wrong to call somebody Latino or Hispanic. It's like calling a Navajo or Diné Cherokee, to call him British, or to call him English, to call him Anglo, because they speak now English, because now they live in the city, because they don't dress like that every day. So little by little, and I started also to surround myself with people who were like-minded. I started to form like my own way to understand that Latinidad, how was like damaging, and it was just bad, for us, for indigenous people.
And so at that point, like I really want to get to your experience with TikTok, right? So with TikTok, when you started making your videos, what was the response that you received, especially from the Quechua-Aymara community, from the Peruvian diaspora? And how did you grow so quickly, or why do you think you grew so fast? Because I mean, you have a lot of, I'm trying to find you right now, a lot of people that follow you, right? You have, let me look here. You have 48,000 followers, 48.7 thousand followers on TikTok. That's amazing, with the messages that you have. Then you put proud indigenous Quechua-Aymara and from New York City. So can you tell us how that happened? I mean, that's like major. And for you to have that space in TikTok and really bring that perspective is amazing. So tell us the very first videos, like how did you get inspired to do these videos, to talk about identity, and what has been the most kind of the interactions that you remember at the beginning, and have they changed over time, or do you have like the same reaction still?
So I felt inspired because I've seen a lot of indigenous creators. I remember seeing Shinanova, Notorious Cree, even Lance, Modern Warrior, so many awesome creators. And I was like, they look like me. Like, wow, they have long hair, right? I saw Indigenous Body too. She's Canadian. And I was like, wow, we look like alike. Like there's so many things in common. Like they're from Canada. They live all the way in the US. And I am from Peru, and we have so many similar topics. Like I didn't know here they have the fried bread. In Peru, we have the chimichanga. It's the same. It's the same. We call it chimichanga, and we call it also I don't remember, but it has different names across Peru, and it's crazy. That blew my mind. I was like, we have so much in common, and we are so separate from each other, right? And then one day I felt like, yeah, I want to speak up about Quechua people too. And then I remember at some point saying, well, maybe I should just give space to indigenous people from the US and from Canada, But then I was like, but we are so many indigenous people in the US who have no idea who are indigenous, right? Maybe I can help them realize that they're also indigenous. So I just focus in sharing my happiness. That's how I decided to do. I'm just gonna share my happiness. And yeah, I got a lot of people who are telling me, you are not indigenous, you are not Quechua. Okay, compare her with somebody who lives in the Andes. And I was like, wow, this is the first time somebody tells me that. Because so many times in Peru me han choleado, me han llamado de India, they're use my last name to make me feel less, you know, as a weapon. And this was the first time that people was telling me, no, you look like you have European on you. Like, you can tell you're not full-blooded. You are like, wow. And I was like, wow, okay. So before, people will make fun of me because I was indigenous. And now that I'm proud to be indigenous, now they're telling me I am not full-blooded. So at the end, they're never going to be happy. There's always going to be haters, right? So what it matters is what I think about myself. This is my journey. It's going to take me some time. Yeah, I know. So I know who I am. And then I just got that feeling. I still didn't know too much about blood quantum. I didn't know too much about many things, but I just got that feeling that it was right. And I shouldn't be focusing in the haters, right? I do remember like one time I got a lot of haters because one video got viral in Spain. And this video was about saying, I was saying that Spaniards didn't bring technology, that they didn't bring development, how they say it in our countries. In Peru, they always say, no, los españoles, a pesar de todo lo que hicieron, nos han traído el desarrollo. Si no fuera por los españoles, ¿dónde estaríamos, right? So I in that video, I always like to send little messages. I don't like to say like, no, you guys killed us. I kind of like to be like, I don't know, in a very subtle way, right? So I basically told them, yeah, you guys didn't bring that. Like, I'm sorry, it's not. But it was in a subtle way. But I got so much hate. Wow. Spaniards will tell me, oh, if you wouldn't because of us, you will be living in the trees. Oh, yes, you wish that, but I bet you have our blood in you. Because of us, now you're on TikTok. Because of us. And I was like, wow. And I felt so depressed. I wasn't able to use TikTok for a week, for 1 week. And then I started to think about indigenous people who live in reservations. And I just thought, wow, I just cannot imagine myself living in a reservation surrounded by Spaniards with that mentality telling me that, oh, they built this huge nation and we built it because of us. And yeah, immigrants, we brought development. Immigrants, we did everything. We built this successful and best country of the world, and be completely invisibilized. So I was like, wow, that is so crazy, right? But yeah, so a lot of my work is also supporting my indigenous brothers and sisters from this territory, because at the end I live here. And the fact that I live here, it means that I benefit from the fact of the massive genocide that it was in this country.
Wow. Well, no, and you know, speaking of the land that you're from, you're saying you're on Lenape territory. I've seen a lot of like language revitalization in the surrounding areas where you live. Can you tell us kind of what that looks like? Because I saw Quechua Collective. I saw there's some pages of there's groups that are learning Quechua. And so it's like that's really like amazing, because here in Tampa territory, we have a lot of revitalization language revivals, which is NAHUA, which is a predominant language. But that's just like very interesting how there's like all these revitalization movements coming up. And can you tell us that experience, like learning your language, you know, Quechua-Aymara or two languages, what that has been for you, what that means to you as an Indigenous person, and how that's changed you or perhaps deepened your connection?
Yeah. So I was so surprised when I found out that there was a Quechua collective in New York City. That blew my mind. I took classes there, of course, but I wanted to keep practicing, and I wanted to have the same Quechua that my grandparents have, which is the Quechua Collao from Cusco, Peru, is the South Quechua. So I found this beautiful platform on YouTube called Vive el Quechua, and I just fall in love with the host. She was from Cusco, just like my grandparents. She spoke Quechua from birth, and the way she will talk, it reminds me the way my grandmother and my grandpa talk in Quechua. Because when you speak in Quechua, it's different. You don't, in Quechua, we don't say like, hi, we say, how are you? Hi, how are you, sister? That's how we say hello. We don't say goodbye. We say until our next meeting, until we see you again. We're gonna see each other again, right? And it's just a different way. It's a different way to see life. Yeah. So I started to learning with her, and she teaches me a lot about the culture and the cosmovision. And I knew that in order to learn another language, it was so important to learn more about the history, the culture, the music, to know more about the art, you know, because everything you will understand. Like the more you knew about it, like it will be easier to speak the language. So she taught me, and she's still teaching me Quechua by singing huaynos, by now we're trying to work like in a monologue in the future, you know. So learning Quechua, it really changed my life because I was able to understand how my ancestors thought of life, right? And now that I'm learning more about the Aini, like the philosophy that they have, the connection, the community, so it's just blowing me away because that's exactly how I felt. Like I consider myself someone who's spiritual, right? And even though I live in a capitalist society, I always wish, like, why do we always have to work to survive? Why we have to buy time? Why do we have to make more money in order to have time to have with our family? So that just didn't make sense for me. And now it's like, oh, that's a whole different way of life, right? That I'm learning now by speaking Quechua.
You know what? When you did your TikTok video, where I was like, oh my goodness, like I related so much to it because years ago I did a video about NAHUA words that a lot of Mexicans speak in the Spanish that we speak.
Oh.
And I was like, there's one TikTok video that you say, oh, you know, you don't speak your language, or you don't speak one of your languages, and then you repeat or you say some of the, I'm not sure they're Quechua words or
Yeah, they were Quechua.
can you share with the viewers like some of those words that come from your language that are used like every day? We don't even know that they come. I didn't know. I was like, what? Like it was like so
Yeah.
like inspiring to see that. Just some words, just so that we can get more.
Yeah. Oh, you want to know the words?
Yeah, just some of them. Some of them that you that
Yeah.
we don't know that.
Like quinoa. Quinoa
Oh,
is Quechua. Like llama, Quechua. Uh, bueno, alpaca is Aymara, actually. Then when in Peru, we always say this expression like, alalau, como que, oh, it's cold. Achachau, como que, oh, it hurts. Like, ananau, que dolor. Or like, atatau, I don't like that. And many Peruvians, they know, and but they know those words, but they have no idea it's come from Quechua. Also, what else? Like chakra comes from Quechua. Cancha comes from Quechua. Sara comes from Quechua as well. Choclio comes from Quechua. Of course, it has a different pronunciation. Yes.
wow. Yeah, because I was like, what? Like it was beautiful. And then the way, and now people can see it, hopefully they'll follow you on TikTok, but just the way you were like saying it, I know my language. And then you were using these words, and I'm like, yes, like that's, You know, and I think that's the beauty of what you're doing. It's like highlighting those things that we take for granted that we don't even know come from our heritage,
Mm,
come from our background, you know? And that was very interesting to me. And as far as the fact that your grandparents, were they the last to speak Quechua?
yes, the
Wow.
four of them. Four of them. Mm-hmm.
And
So from the side of my mom, my grandma is still alive. She speaks Quechua beautifully. It's just so crazy how when she speaks Quechua, she has like a whole different personality. She's funnier, she's smiling, she's caring. Same with my other grandma who is alive. My grandma who is Aymara, right? And she's so funny. Oh wow, she's hilarious. And it's because, uh, for example, like everything, because some words have some different meanings, so they play with it and they say a lot of jokes with that. So it's so funny. And my grandma, who's Aymara, she loves to sing guainitos, right? And she's actually very old, and she forgets a lot of things. Sometimes she forgets who I am, who am I, right? And she tell me, oh, she forget a lot of things. But if I tell her like, hey, grandma, esa chalita, tan, 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 y ella empieza, and she starts to sing her whole song that it's a guainito, that it's like a traditional, you know, Aymaran song, and she remembers. But it's so crazy how she still has it, you know. It's like it's her first language, you know, it's her family language, her heritage, right? And of course it kind of makes me sad that I don't speak it, but I feel like, you know, all my ancestors spoke my indigenous language, you know, and basically the only ones who don't speak it is my mom, my parents, and myself. So I say, why do I have to be the one, right? Why it has to finish there with my mom? No, and with me, no. I'm just gonna continue speaking it, no, and taking pride from it.
that's really beautiful, because I know, like, as far as Mexico, language was used to strip indigenous communities from who they were. Like in my family, it was 3 generations ago that we stopped speaking Nahuatl, and then learning out Mexican policies to repress languages. Like it's basically looking at mestizo just meant you were speaking Spanish or you moved into the city, but you were still indigenous according to the government. So that's always interesting how language and identity, you know, are separated, and then how we're trying to bring them back together, right, as we decolonize.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your acting, you know, your acting career, your motivations in film.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is behind that? Like, what inspired you to pursue acting, and what's the vision, or how you want to contribute acting to, you know, the voices of our peoples and the message of decolonization?
So I remember when I was a little kid, um, loving TV and film. But when, like, while I was growing up, I realized that there was no room for people like me, because I would always see people who look like me and my brother and my mom and my dad being the bad ones, the poor ones, the ugly ones, explicitly, right? So I felt, okay, there's no room for me, because I don't want to play the ugly one, or like the one who is like the bad one. I don't want to play that. I don't, right? So I just didn't, I just took that out of my mind until I came to New York City. And when I was in New York City, I felt like, okay, this is a new beginning for me. What's gonna be next? And I was obsessed with how the mind worked, and I wanted to become a therapist as well, a psychologist. And my other option was acting. And I was like, okay, going back to school, doing college again, or like act, right? And being Hollywood. So I was like, no, I'll go to Hollywood, right? So at the beginning, like people will tell me, oh wow, so you want to be like the next Sofia Vergara, the next Salma Hayek? And I was like, yeah, I guess I do. Sure, yeah. But at some point, like it didn't feel right because I don't look like them, right? I do not feel represented with them. And once I got my manager, my agent, I just realized that the like the characters, the people I will be submitting for, like auditioning for, were the same ones, right? And I realized, is this who we are? Like, is this is it? Because this is not only who we are. We are not only immigrant, illegal immigrants. We're not only that, right? So I feel like it wasn't fair. It just didn't honor reality, who I was. So eventually, I decided to create my own films, right? And I want to be a filmmaker. I want to also, because they're not indigenous writers, they're not indigenous directors, producers. And of course, if they're going to work on something that is indigenous with indigenous people, they're going to do it from their own perspective, right? Which is whatever they learn in school, whatever they've seen on TV, and their experience, which is almost nothing, right? Because even if you see an indigenous person and then you see like a movie where indigenous are in a certain way, you won't realize that person is indigenous because you already have that stereotype in your mind. And I have to say, I didn't have that stereotype in my mind because I will see so many bad stereotypes of indigenous people, and I will say, oh, well, I don't look like them, so I'm not indigenous, right? And I also don't want to look indigenous because I don't want to be related to that stereotype. So really the media, it's so powerful. TV, film, so powerful. And what I like the most about it is that you can send a message and sometimes like the viewers don't even realize they're getting the message, right? That could be dangerous as well, of course. But it's a powerful tool, right? So I'm thinking we can give this message about like mestiza, what it really means to be mestizo, what it really means to be indigenous by creating. And um, some people like won't even realize they're getting the message, right? It's like then they will say, oh no, this is what it means, right? To be indigenous or not to be indigenous, right? So uh, that's what I love about TV and film and my mission as an artist. And it's something that I shape, in this, especially this last year, is that I just want to empower my own people, right? And I feel like, how can we empower ourselves? By knowing who we are, because we really do not know who we are. I didn't know what was the meaning of my last name until a year ago, until I actually looked it up, right? And if you don't know what you are, like, how can you love something you don't know? So for me, it's really important that to empower us, to educate ourselves together, because I feel like there's no better source than another indigenous person who could tell you really how it is, right? And that's the reason I'm also doing this Native Voices series on IG and Instagram. And ultimately, like, to bring unity between all indigenous people in the continent and bring honor to us, respect. And first, by respecting us, like, we have to start by respecting ourselves, with love in our features, everything.
Absolutely, absolutely, Sisa. Thank you for that. And I want to start wrapping it up and ask you just the last two questions. Number one is for people that are watching you, that are having, because there's a lot of people. There's been this wave of people that are waking up to this knowledge, that are starting to question Latinidad, starting to question mestizaje, and I see a lot of youth. And I think because of the Trump era, because of what happened last year with Black Lives Matter, with children in cages, there's like this complete like rise in this interest. What would you say to like someone that's out there looking, right, that doesn't feel comfortable saying they're indigenous, that are like, no, I'm not, like, because there's a lot of gaslighting on indigenous identity.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes you strong? Like, what are some of the things that you tell yourself, or something that inspires you to resist that and to be strong as an Indigenous person? Can you kind of give those words of wisdom to people that are watching this? Because I come across
Yes.
people all the time that are like, I don't feel comfortable, I shouldn't do this, but they are, you know what I mean? But they are Indigenous, like we are Indigenous. It's just all these layers. What is something that you
Yeah.
would tell them to empower them?
So I will tell them, listen to your heart first. Because when you feel like there's something not wrong with it, you have to listen to it and then look for it. Because if you don't feel comfortable being Indigenous, it's for a reason. Like, why? So what is your like objection, right? My objection was like, oh no, I am not full-blooded, until I learn and educate myself about blood quantum. And I realized that you don't have to be full-blooded to be Indigenous. So first is listen to your heart, look, educate yourself, and understand that this is the process, that this is gonna take time, and that you are not by yourself, that you have amazing people like you, Citlalli, like not like just like me. There's so many creators who are sharing their journey, who are sharing like their pride in their own way, because we are all different and we have a different voice. So just be like open to listen to these voices and just let them go straight to your heart.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Sisa. And to end tonight's talk, you know, again, very grateful for your time. I wanted to ask you, what is something that, and I'm gonna get some of the questions that you ask your guests, which I love on Native Voices. You give questions like, what do you expect? Like I know you asked this question to
Yeah.
Lance, right? And I think you've asked it to other people. And it's like, I think it's a beautiful question because it kind of makes us think historically about our
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's a question that I would like to ask you, you know, what would you like to see in the next 20, 30, 40 years, right? For Indigenous folks on the continent. What are some of the changes that you envision? What are some of the hopes that you have? You know, if you can guide us with that.
I think Latinidad is not going to be a thing in the next 50 years. Same as Hispanidad. Um, my hopes is that we all come together, we embrace who we are, and for people who are not Indigenous, to respect us. That's what I'm just hoping, and I'm very positive that it's going to happen, because there is a lot of people awakening just like us. And it's like a whole chain, you know, everything is just exploding. And like we mentioned this before, like the giant is awakening. And I'm really looking forward, because I know in 50 years, it's going to be more likely to be, it's more likely to be more Indigenous population in the continent. So we are the future, and it's important right now that we have to prepare us for that, you know, our roots.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And just any last words, you know, anything that, because I know I want everyone to know that you have a strong presence on TikTok. You are on Instagram where you offer Native Voices. Is that every week that you have that?
No, I don't do it every week.
Okay.
I actually do it. It's according to the person who I'm interviewing. This is actually very right now is like very casual, but in the future I would love to have like a little YouTube channel, and maybe in the future have like kind of like a talk show, kind of like an Oprah thing, you know, and inviting different people, different Indigenous people, and highlighting, you know. I believe every person has a very powerful voice, and more than ever us, we need to speak up more than ever, because we never know who are we inspiring. We never know, we have no idea. And I remember my ñañay told me, my ñañay, my sister who teaches me Quechua, she told me, if you feel you're Sisa Quispe, you are Sisa Quispe. And that really changed the way I've seen, because Sisa has such a huge meaning for me. And that opened up, you know, for so many things for me. And same, every time you speak up, you say something, you're changing, you're affecting somebody else's life. So more than ever, as Indigenous people or people who are reconnecting, it's important to speak up and share our journey. Absolutely. And come together. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, Sisa. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. You know, I think the message that you give, the creativity that you're offering, and I really like your choice of career as far as being an actress and creating your own films, because that's the way that we start telling our own stories. Because there's too many Hollywood, there's too many people using our stories, using our cultures. So the fact that you are going to be leading into that future of creating our own films, creating our own media, which is what I love about TikTok, YouTube. Like, we're creating our own media. This is our media. This is our voice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're editing it, we're producing it ourselves. So it's a lot of autonomy. It's a lot of sovereignty in our creativity. So I really want to, you know, wish you the best in your acting career and everything that you do. I would love to see Native Voices as a program, as a like you're saying, a whole production, because I think the vision that you have is amazing. And the people that you have invited, I mean, I was invited, so, you know, I'm proud of that.
We are the best.
Yes. Lisa, for those of you who don't know, she did invite me to talk about mestizaje, and it was an amazing talk. Go on her Instagram page, and she has them under their videos, not on the main.
On IGTV.
IGTV, thank you.
So you need to swipe twice. Swipe twice, and then you will see all the videos on IGTV. And we are going to have an upcoming one in Spanish too.
Yes. Vamos a hablar sobre la mestizaje en el lenguaje español para nuestra gente que habla español. Yeah, I'm really excited for that, Sisa, and I really see how the importance of it and the fact that people are listening and paying attention. So I think there's a lot of power in the work that you're doing. So I want to end with that. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for everything that you're doing, for having such a positive approach to this, because I think a lot of people, you know, it could be a very like daunting work where people are like, there's a lot of anxiety people get. But if we can love ourselves, like you're talking about, love, centering yourself in your love for your people, it makes the journey a lot more like beautiful and a lot more like happier, and it just makes things a lot more, you know, pretty for us to feel and heal. And yeah, I'm really excited for that. And I love that energy that you put out there, because we need that, you know, our communities, we need that positivity. We need that positive outlook, and you provide it, you know. And I want everyone to follow your work, to wish you well, to, if they have a program, if they want to invite you, if they're working on a film, if they're working on something that they want to center, you know, Indigenous perspectives, hopefully they can reach out to you and get that going, because we need this. We need our films. We need our stories to be told. So until next time, Sisa, any last words you want to say before we end the night?
Yeah, I just want to say Urpilia Sankolyai Nyanyai and Tupananchiskama.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. This has been Mexican Excellence with our guest, Sisa Quispe. So make sure to follow her work. Until next time, we will see you again on Mexican Excellence. This is Citlalli and Sisa saying good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
But we're lighting up the torches, tired of genocide or liberation day approaches. Indigenous movement, we're lighting up the torches, tired of genocide or liberation day approaches. We keep walking on our stolen lands, kept in poverty with chains on our hands. We are ancient owners of this continent. No matter how hard they try, we will never forget. But ignorance does not let us understand. Since 1492, they've been squatters on our lands, blinded by the lies that we failed to see, that we are the survivors of the biggest genocide. White supremacy is kicking and alive, keeping us from truth and vision from our eyes, keeping us from truth and vision from our eyes.